since you brought up Malcolm X, I know that it's certainly an inspiration for you. Malcolm X said that people don't realize how a man's whole life can be changed by one book. Pretty amazing. So
Yeah,
for
it's
you,
true.
what is one book that you can point to that has changed your life, and how has it directly impacted you?
Wow. Man, I've so like I you know I before kids I read voraciously. So there's a lot of books, but the autobiography of Malcolm X is one that um definitely changed the way I thought about myself and thought about the world and was just that was a I consider reading that book. It was it was an unfolding of myself as I went through that book. I discovered myself through reading that book. It was incredibly revealing. There's other books I've found great comfort in over the years. Kierkegaard's Sickness Unto Death was a gorgeous book for me to read. Lord have mercy. Now I'm on the spot. What else would be another great book that felt formative, man? What's funny? I remember the same friend that gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X is the same friend that told me in 2009, like, hey, have you read Outliers? No, you got to read this book, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So, let me check it out. And I remember, at that point I was studying philosophy and I was like, well, here's a book, and I was into psychology. I was like, well, here's a book that really the opposite of like Kierkegaard makes things accessible. And I was really, of course, I'm starting to feel out this sort of journalism road. And I'm realizing like, oh, there's like a world where you can take these dense concepts and make them easily digestible for people to read and just sort of get the information, and Outliers, I loved it. It really it inspired me. And so, it's just funny that it's incredible to me that all these years later, I now get to work with Malcolm Gladwell. It's beautiful.
It is pretty amazing. Now, in a situation like that, and thank you for sharing that. I had not heard that before, but I do believe that there are no coincidences. So the fact that without getting woo woo, the fact that that book entered your life at that point had a certain type of impact on you, brought Malcolm Gladwell's work into your life, right? That there was a
Yeah,
seed that was planted there, and then it just took time for that to germinate and ultimately unfold into what you're doing in the relationships that you have today. So I think
absolutely.
that's incredible. So we go from UC Berkeley. You worked with Tavis Smiley, then you go to work for NPR. You're at NPR for what, 3.5, almost 4 years, and
Yep.
accomplished a remarkable amount of work at NPR, held a tremendous amount of responsibility. So at this stage, now, how do you identify yourself?
What was funny? Like, we were talking about how like as a teenager to hang around college campuses, and that was really my sole focus. I was like, I felt like I needed to get through that. By the time I graduated, discovered journalism, ended up back in grad school. By the time I get my job, which was I started 2 weeks after I graduated from grad school, I felt a bit of a loss of a sense of purpose. Even though I had found journalism, this sort of post-school life sort of felt like, what am I all of a sudden found myself at a cubicle for what for me felt like a rather large company, certainly an established company where I wasn't sure what kind of impact I could make or not make. And school is very entrepreneurial. You kind of really do make of it what you will make of it. And this sort of felt like a very different experience. It felt very much like there's a prescribed role that you're in. And if you want to go if you want to do a different role, you must apply for this thing or show that you can do it in this particular way. Whereas at school, it's like, oh, you want to try, just go try it. You know, there's very much this, if you go, what's nothing stopping you, do it, you know? And so I sort of felt this lack of a sense of purpose at that point, which then shortly after, you know, my now wife became pregnant with our daughter, which felt terrifying. But in hindsight, thank God, because it gave me a sense of purpose again. You know, it restored my sense. It gave me a whole new sense of purpose. You know, and then that became, well, I can't just sit and flounder. I know that this is a place where things are prescribed and you're supposed to just be happy you have the role that you have and spend your years and, you know, slowly move through the ranks. But it felt like, no, now I've got to make something work here. You know, like I can't quit. I need the money. And so I very quickly need to figure out, how can I impact this place? How can I have an impact at this place? And so that was honestly one of the beyond just the personal value and love that my daughter brings to my life, and now my second one too, is like, it also, my career really helped me.
So discovering that sense of purpose after your first child is born, what was then the very first thing that you did when you decided that this is going to work at NPR? What did you do to start that process of rediscovering that sense of purpose and feeling good about the work that you were doing?
I feel like I did. I feel like I just annoyed the hell out of everybody I possibly could. You know, I started just, you know, I started, to be honest, and I don't know that I always would recommend this, but I started going around my boss, trying to talk to other people to see what other assignments could I get. I started developing relationships outside of my department, such that, you know, people could see, oh, maybe this person could lend their skills over here, over there. I just, you know, so I really just started like trying to bump up against any boundary I could to see which one is going to let me through. You know, all right, that boundary's pretty firm. That wall's pretty firm. What's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one? Until I feel like I finally found, you know, a few points of entry, a couple of different places, you know, and it always felt good, as frustrating as it was. And it was frustrating to come up against those boundaries. It always was gratifying to find those little pockets where it's like, okay, boom, there's a little daylight right there. Like, let me go run it, you know? You know, I was, you know, as far as I know, I was like the only morning edition producer to be like, I started producing informally, like live events at NPR with David Green, who was the host. Like, we did an event with Zach Galifianakis, and we did an event with Tom Hanks. And, you know, it was just like, you know, we almost had the opportunity. We had the opportunity and we didn't take advantage of it because, again, just of the bureaucracy of the whole situation. But with Jordan Peele, right before Jordan Peele blew up with his movie, with his Nope. So anyways, yeah. So, you know, I was just like, what can I do to break out of this? What you see me as a morning edition producer, which is great. I love being a morning edition producer, but I know there's more I can do and there's more value I can provide. And so I just started seeking those opportunities out.
So how do you ultimately meet Malcolm Gladwell?
So by the time I meet Malcolm, I had, again, through just pestering and annoying and through building relationships, I finagled a position on the arts desk as a reporter. So now I'm transitioning to be a reporter. They want me to move to, no, even though I'm covering arts and entertainment, they want me to move from LA to DC. My wife's pregnant with our second daughter at that time. We're native Californians, you know, I've jumped at that point. My salary's, you know, my salary's been raised, you know, I've tripled my salary, but it's still not that much. It's started quite low. So I'm looking at, like, you know, moving costs and what are apartments in DC like, and like, how do you shovel snow? Like, do we want to do this? And we're like, man, maybe not. So I felt like I was at another sort of turning point in life. I go out on paternity leave. My daughter's born. A couple of weeks later, I get an email from a professor of mine from college, Ben Manila, who I love, and he's forwarding an email on from a producer of Malcolm saying, "Hey, we're starting this music show. Uh, we need someone LA based who loves music and is a great producer to handle this. Like, do you know anyone?" He's like, he forwarded it to me and said, "Does this seem interesting to you? Working with Rick and Malcolm on this thing?" Like, absolutely, you know. So I was on the phone with Mia the next day. I was at a cafe in Santa Monica with Malcolm within 2 weeks, um, discussing the opportunity. And by the time the end of October rolled around, my daughter was born October 1. By the time the end of October rolled around, I was already working with Malcolm. So it happened out of the blue, and it happened very fast. And I'm incredibly grateful.
What an amazing story. So when you met him and had that initial conversation, did it hit you that you had read Outliers in 2009 and this was the person that was sitting across from you?
100%. I mean, I told him it, when we were emailing before you were setting up the meeting, I was like, look, I have to tell you, like, I love you, man. Like, I love, like, I don't want, I'm very respectful of, I don't want to, I want to be respectful of people and don't, obviously, like, I'm going to work for him. I don't want him to think that, this is going to impact work. But I said, look, I just have to let you know, I got your book in 2008 through a friend, and it really changed my perception of what writing can be. That it doesn't have to be, um, that it can be inclusive. That you can write in order to inform the most amount of people possible and do the most good, and write in a way that draws people in. Like, it really, and so I kind of gushed for a bit over email, and thankfully he forgave me. But yes, it did sink in, and he knew I was quite taken with him. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. What a fantastic story. So you are involved in co-hosting and producing this amazing podcast about music and the stories behind music, the stories
Yeah.
behind the people, which is really incredible. Obviously, you are a music nerd. You love music yourself. So what a
That's
perfect
one thing I
fit.
haven't talked about yet, is that this whole time though, the one consistent thing throughout my life is I love music, man. That's it.
So
All kinds.
you play guitar, right?
Played guitar growing up, piano, drums, mandolin, trumpet. The only thing that's really stuck at this point is guitar and piano, and I don't even play those that much anymore. So it's unfortunate,
So
but yeah.
so you're a multi instrumentalist, and knowing who you're working with Rick Rubin, who is just I mean, they're
Yeah.
today he is the man, right? He
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the man.
Yeah.
Uh, has he asked you to be on any albums?
No, no, he's not. I don't think he's looking for me to be on any either.
That's funny. So, speaking of books that can change a person's life, have
Yeah.
you read his book?
Of course. Yeah, I've read it a few
Oh,
times. Yeah. It's
The
beautiful.
Creative
The
Act.
creative
It
act.
is it is a beautifully written book.
Hmm.
And so for any of you that are watching and listening right now, if you have not picked up a copy of The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, I would certainly encourage you to do so. And
Yeah.
not only pick up a copy of the hardcover, but definitely get the Audible version as well, which Rick narrates. And it is
Yeah.
such an amazing book that can help all of us become more creative and be able to look at how we can bring more creativity in our lives. And he really does such a magnificent job of
Yeah.
creating that book and bringing it to life. So
And creativity, not only in the sense of creation of music or creation of art, but really like the creation of, and the building and the organizing of your life. How do you feel it? How can you operate in your life at your most inspired, as your most inspired self? It's really, yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, so true. So now you launch your own podcast. So
Yeah.
speak to creating started from the bottom. What was the impetus for creating it? Why is it so meaningful to you? And share with our audience a bit about the story behind it and what they can expect when they listen.
Yeah. So starting from the bottom is a pretty simple premise, and it's that uh, mentorship is important. Representation is important. Seeing yourself in the world is important. I had to go to universities to see people being students for it to click that I could be like them. To take that a little further, when you and I discovered this. I thought I was the one that felt this way, but through my years in school and early into my career, talking to friends, I've discovered that a lot of people of color and a lot of women don't grow up in proximity to other people of color or women who are who've attained a level of success that they could share with them how to get there. Most people grow up with an uncle, a cousin, a brother, something, right? But most people, like a lot of us, didn't see that in our lives. See someone that looked like us, who could post a sign and be like, this is how you start a business. This is how you pitched to a boardroom full of investors. This is how, like those people didn't exist. And so what happened was when I was at NPR at this time, when I was testing many different boundaries, I'd happened to have a chance meeting with another great music producer, Quincy Jones. We became friendly. I told him I told him I could create a podcast for him. And so we agreed. I started pitching it around, and I couldn't, without naming where I was pitching it and who I was pitching it to, I found myself in rooms and on calls with a lot of people who didn't look like me. And I didn't feel comfortable, not just because they didn't look like me, but what I realized was I don't know this world. I don't know how to speak this language. And a lot of it was just business jargon and business speak. And I felt like, well, if I don't, I feel it started to get to the point where I felt like if I don't know how to, if I can't crack this code, like I can't get this soul because we're just speaking different languages, And around that time, Byron Allen, who's a Black comedian, had bought the Weather Channel. I was like, man, you know what? I bet if I could talk to Byron Allen, he would tell me exactly how to crack this code. And so at that point, I thought, you know what? If I were to be able to track him down, I should really record that conversation. And then I started thinking about all the other people I could track down and speak to and record those conversations. And I started thinking about all the times that as a kid, I would corner people. Like if I saw a Black man on a plane in a suit, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm the West Coast representative salesperson for Siemens, or and just trying to understand, like again, like just like me trying to put myself at the university, trying to figure out what exactly do you do? Oh, I do outside sales. Well, what does that mean? Just asking the dumb questions. There's so many times that people tell you what they do and you walk away and not 100% understanding what it is, what it takes, how they got there. And so I really wanted to create a kind of a guide to success for outsiders. And that's the premise of the show.
I love it. And it is such a great show. So I've listened to several of the episodes that you've released, and you do a wonderful job of guiding the conversation. You've got a fantastic voice as well, but you ask great questions, and questions are the spice of life. It is the way that we discover. It's the way that we follow our curiosity. It's the way that we learn. And you do such an exceptional job of that. So for all of you that are watching and listening right now, we're obviously going to provide a link to Justin's new podcast. And I would definitely encourage you to go out and listen to it and make sure that you subscribe to it as well. So congratulations.
And yeah, it's really, and it really is, if you're into an underdog story or underdog stories, like this is something I think anyone could get a lot out of.
I totally agree with you on that point. So as we wrap up our conversation, I've got a couple more questions for you. One of them is to, this will be a simple one, share with us the best place that our audience can go to connect with you, to learn more about the great things that you're doing and see the content that you put out on social.
Finally, an easy one I can answer. Okay. You can find me at it's J Richmond. That's Richmond on both Twitter and Instagram. And you can follow me there. I'll post anything that I do there. And yeah, that's where you can find me and my work.
Excellent. Next question for you. What is the most difficult decision that you've had to make in the pursuit of the person who you've become?
Oh boy, we're back to the hard questions now. Okay. What is the most difficult
decision that you've had to make in the pursuit of the person who you've become?
The most difficult decision I've had to make is a decision I think I've finally just made recently, within the last year, which is to allow myself to truly be myself, you know? Again, going back to that, not being able to imagine myself in certain places. So sometimes when I would get to places where I felt like I needed to be someone different, you know? And that's fine, but it's not fulfilling, you know? And I'm not always bringing, I think, so many people. I mean, if you post a position and you take a job, the fact of the matter is there's countless people who could fill that position as well as you do, if you only look at, kind of what your skills are on paper. But there is a certain je ne sais quoi that we all have, that I think, and that's that fingerprint that we can, sort of make on a job, at a company, on a team of people, that really only you can bring to it. And if you're not allowing yourself to be yourself because you don't feel good enough, or you don't think you fit in, you're not allowing yourself to really see if you can leave that mark there, and maybe the mark you leave is not great. That's okay. That place might not be for you. There will be some place for you. So again, just getting to be comfortable, to allow myself to be myself. It's really only been the last year, but it has been very difficult, man. And I look, I got therapy tomorrow to talk about it. I'm doing it once a week, baby, trying to work this out. It's been very, it's been over 15 years now trying. It's been, 18, 19 years since I dropped out of high school. Now I'm trying to really get to a place where it's okay. I am good enough.
So beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. And good for you for seeking therapy and going down that road of discovery. It's such an important thing for all of us to do in one shape or another.
My work is always so much better the weeks I have therapy. I say that I'm always much more productive those weeks.
I feel you on that. And I'll just
Yeah.
share with you from my own personal experience that journey of discovery, that journey of healing, it is ongoing, right?
Yeah.
We don't reach, there's not a point where we say we've arrived. It's an ongoing process. So go all in and follow that path the way that it works for you. And I want to thank you so much, Justin, for joining us today. Thank you for being real. Thank you for bringing your true, authentic self, for sharing your story, sharing your knowledge and your insights with us. It was such a great conversation, and I am grateful for you.
Jay, thank you, man. I appreciate the questions. Those are, I'm going to be thinking about them. I hope maybe I can revise some answers, because those are some really great questions, and I will be thinking about them. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure.
Enjoyed my time.
Absolutely. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching and listening. And I do have a favor to ask. Would you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple Podcast? As a matter of fact, when you go to listen to Justin's podcast, do exactly the same thing. Subscribe to his podcast and leave a review. That helps all of us, helps our podcast grow and reach a larger audience. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com. Click that podcast button. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.